Our next speaker, Jeff Henderson, grew up on the tough streets of South Central LA and San Diego, and by the time he was 19 years old, he was running a $35,000 a week cocaine business, and for his crimes, he spent 10 years in prison. So what happened after that? Well, let's see.
Finally tonight, our person of the week. He's an ex-convict who's the first to tell you he is not proud of his early years. But after turning his life around, he's cooked up a way to reach troubled young people and give them a chance.
When I first went to prison, I pretty much felt that I was done. I was finished. And I blamed everyone for my shortcomings. But it wasn't until several years after my incarceration when I began to value education. I began to accept responsibility for my past. And that planted the seed for change.
And what a change Jeff Henderson has made. He has gone from crack dealer to prison inmate to celebrated chef. His love for cooking started in a prison kitchen.
I used to be the omelet man in prison. The basics of cooking in prison is a little different from most restaurants. You don't have the 6-burner stoves or the saute pans. We made sure that we were putting out a great product, for the prison population. Food is one of the most important things to a person who is incarcerated.
But cooking for inmates and then after release convincing a fancy restaurant to hire him were two very different things.
I had to diffuse the prison stigma. I had to make the felony jacket disappear. I had to straighten up the way I walk. I had to clean shave my face. I took makeup to cover my earring hole up, and I learned to smile.
He started as a dishwasher. Eventually, a mentor at Caesar's Palace in Las Vegas took a chance on Jeff, and 4 years after getting out of prison, he was an executive chef at Caesar's. For many cooks, that might be enough. But Chef Jeff wanted more. He wrote a best-selling warts and all memoir, started a catering company, and is now the star of the Chef Jeff Project on the Food Network.
With garlic, herb,
It's
potatoes.
Not your average cooking show.
I'm going to be your preacher, a chef, your father. I wanted to create a show that changes lives, inspires lives, and motivates lives through the power of food. That's what this Chef Jeff Project is about. I was able to take 6 young people who come from diverse backgrounds, gangs, drugs, homelessness, dysfunctional families, and create an opportunity for them. Does this look like what I showed you?
If they all make it through Chef Jeff's 6-week culinary boot camp, he'll provide them with scholarships to a cooking school.
Hey! You guys with me? Yes, sir. Prison saved my life. I was rescued from the streets. But I hope these young people can make the change in their life in society today without having to go to prison and take that journey that I had to take.
But Chef Jeff hasn't forgotten his brothers still inside.
There's a lot of people who've been to prison who's successful out there. They just don't talk about it. I talk about it. I know for the rest of my life that I'll be giving back, trying to fix the wrong. I'm not proud of what I've done in my former life. Today, I do truly believe that it's my responsibility. Tears a day, huh? But it's also my passion. Besides cooking, I truly believe it's my calling to touch the lives of people who feel they have no hope or have no potential to be successful.
And so we choose Jeff Henderson. He told us his favorite dish to cook and eat is something he calls friendly fried chicken. The name of his mentor in prison, by the way, another inmate, was Friendly Womack.
Ladies and gentlemen, Chef Jeff.
Wow. Welcome. How's everybody feeling today? How was the lunch? Great lunch? Yes. First of all, I really want to say that I'm extremely honored and very humble to be chosen to be here at the UP Experience. And I want to spend the next 18 minutes making my case for leadership and diversity from the hood, the power of potential. For those of you who may not know what a hood is, I'm going to draw a parallel between the hood, the ghetto, the trailer park, the apartment complexes in concrete city of New York. I was born in the hood. I came from poverty. I came from a broken family and single-parent home. There were many things that I saw as the dreamer, the little boy, as you see here with the Coke bottle, thick glasses. I was a dreamer. I was a dreamer like millions of young people from across this country who grew up in an environment where they saw, heard, and experienced things that they never should have. As the gentleman spoke earlier, the former DEA agent, he talked about the paradigm between the drugs of the 70s, heroin and LSD, and then the crack cocaine epidemic of the 1980s. Well, let me tell you something. As I take you on this journey through the hood, the journey through prison, the journey through corporate America, to the American dream, my mission is to get you to really understand the power of potential in individuals who may have grew up with circumstances and situations that shape the thinking process of them. The hustler. The hustler. The hustler or a businessman. The hustler or intellectual. The hustler or individual who saw something in himself. See, when I was young, at the age of 7, I knew that there was something different about me. I knew that I was different from my father. I knew that I was different from the many men in my community. I had one dream, and that one dream, the American dream, was to have a house on a hill with a white picket fence, with one of those fancy double-door refrigerators, where my sister and I would wake up in the morning and have choices for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. That wasn't a reality for me. So the individuals, the characters, the older homeboys, the influencers in my community embarked on that crack cocaine epidemic of the 80s. So it was in 1984 that I embraced a criminal lifestyle. My criminal lifestyle was shaped by my mentors. I wanted more for my mother. I wanted more for my sister. And I decided that this was the way for me, which was the meal ticket for tens of thousands of young men of color in inner city communities across America. So when we talk about the war on drugs and we talk about the victimizers in the community, I was one of those guys. And it's not something that I'm proud of, but you always have to go back to the beginning of how it began. Who brought the drugs in the ghettos? Who taught the crack dealers how to cook powder into crack cocaine? Who brought the weapons? Well, our intellect wasn't expanded wide enough to know how to do that logistically. So we was taught. I made up to $35,000 a week in my heyday. But one thing that I wasn't able to see because I had the blinders on. When you grow up in poverty, the front lobe that many of these intellectuals talk about that goes undeveloped, it doesn't allow you to see the world through the eyes of people who have been exposed, who have had access to the American dream. So we see one thing, that's how to hustle, how to put food on the table. And one of the biggest mistakes that many of our mothers in our community put on the burden of young boys is for a mother to say that you are the man of the house. When a mother tells you that you are the man of the house at 7 to 8 years old, every boy wants to help his mother. Every boy doesn't like to see his mother abused, doesn't like to see his mother going through various challenges in life. So they called me a hustler back in the days. Well, in my world, we were called hustlers. In the corporate world, they're called CEOs and businessmen. I had gift of gab. I was the gab master. I used to talk a lot. I was slick. In the corporate world, they call that a master communicator. Okay? So here were the parallels between the street hustler, the multi-million-dollar drug dealers who never used drugs, who never was a part of gangs, who never carried guns. So what does that tell you and it tells me about people from this demographics? Well, I believe that everybody was born with a gift. I believe that everybody was born with the abilities and the strength and the genius to become someone. The reason why we're successful in here, because we discovered that. We unleashed that. But there's so much talent in the hood. There's so much individuals out there who are smart, who were forward thinkers, but they were using that intellect the wrong way. When I was on the street, I understood marketing. I understood branding. I knew how to manage a diverse workforce. I had gang members following me, like any CEO, any leader, or great manager of a company. When you're a great leader, you have vision. And when you have vision, it becomes very addictive. People want to be a part of that. This here, crack. If any of you guys ever seen crack before, raise your hand if you've seen crack. Now, you probably may not want to raise your hand. You know, these are little kibbles. We call them G-Rocks. These are $100 a piece on the street, right here. $100 a piece. 28 grams an ounce. I sold my ounces with 30 grams because I knew if I gave my customers a few extra grams and they made $350 extra, I could corner the market. I built powerful relationships because I studied the brightest, most successful drug dealers on the street. How do they look? How do they walk? How do they talk? I became an analyst. I only sold drugs on the street corner for a month. And the next thing you know, the guys who taught me, I was supplying them. Well, the little boy I showed you earlier, the dreamer, like tens of thousands of young people on the street, the one thing that no one ever saw in me, they didn't know how to flip my gift to gab. They didn't know how to flip the ability that I was a #1 newspaper boy when I was 8. I had the #1 candy seller route when I was a little boy. But no one saw that because my mother was blind. It's not that she was uneducated, she was miseducated. So no one was able to say, Jeffrey, what do you want to be when you grow up? No one saw that in me. So as a drug dealer, I became very successful. I had the ability to tap into the talent and the strength of people on the streets. That's how I was able to move the product. Same scenario that I'm going to take you to. The hustler or the businessman. And I'm not putting praise on the fact that drug dealers are these great individuals. Even though we victimized by selling drugs, we were also victims of our community and the people around us that shaped our thinking because we didn't have access. Young people don't have access to brilliant minds. Young people don't have access to the information that allows you to close the gap between the have and the have-nots. Age 19, millionaire, indicted by the federal government in 1988, served 10 years in prison. 10 years in prison that I served. 10 years. Walking on concrete every single day. Sitting on a stainless steel toilet with toilet paper that's hard as a brown paper bag. Well, Chef Jeff, how did you change? How did the blinders come off? How did you begin to see the world through a different set of eyes? Well, it didn't happen overnight. There was a collective of situations, circumstances, intellectual stimulation. I read my first book in prison. I was told for the first time in my life that I was smart in prison. An older man in prison taught me how to shave with a razor in prison. The first time that I ever was called son was in prison. But not only did that begin to get me to see myself different, I became the same analyst that I was on the streets. See, I was in the federal system. I was in prison with some of the brightest minds on the universe. Stockbrokers, presidents and CEOs of corporations, judges, lawyers, former DEA agents. I began to build the relationships with them. I became an intellectual jacker. I robbed them for knowledge. I was part of Toastmasters in prison. We had a think tank in prison where we brought the brightest minds together on the prison yard. And we debated race, religion, politics, current events. They introduced me to 60 Minutes, 2020, Primetime Live. That's right. I learned to cook in prison. I found my gift in prison. Not only was my gift to cook and to create in prison, I found my gift of speaking. I found my gift of writing. 3 hustles 3 revenue streams that I learned in prison. Because it was in prison when I was faced with the reality and the impact that crack cocaine had in inner city cities across this great country. I knew at that moment I had to change. When I came home from prison in 1996, they told me I couldn't get a job and I wouldn't get a job. Well, I proved them wrong. I went in as a dishwasher. When I first got my job, there were things I had to change about me when I got out of prison. Everything. I had to build a brand. I had to rebuild my image. Clean shaved my face. Took makeup to cover my earring hole up. No tattoos. Quit lifting weights so I wasn't big and bulky. I got my teeth fixed. A $2,600 grill. Look at that. Because I understood the importance of a smile. I had to make the felony jacket become transparent. I had to make it disappear. I even had to straighten up the way I walk, because I still walk cool sometimes. So this is how I used to walk. So I had to get my corporate swag down, right? I couldn't walk into the Bellagio Hotel, the Ritz-Carlton, the Hotel Bel Airs of the world with some of the most prestigious, creative talent in the world. Chef Jeff. How did I do it? I built the right relationships. I learned to smile. I changed my swagger. I made the felony jacket disappear. I went amongst the best, the brightest, and I got access. And I realized in prison, when I studied these white-collar guys, multi-millionaires, Rosario Gambino, head of the Gambino crime family in New York City, Ivan Boesky, the co-defendant of Michael Milken, these were the characters who shaped me, but not just me, but many men in prison. Our friend David Eggleman earlier talked about 30% of people go to prison have a mental health issue. But what about the 70 that doesn't? Where do we go wrong? When do we make the wrong choices? Wrong choices are inspired by something that we see, something we hear, whether it's greed, whether it's poverty, whether it's just trying to beat the system or something like that. It was fueled by my dream. The gift was cooking. Never knew that in my life. Never dreamed of becoming a chef. I used to cook crack. I used to take 1 kilo of powder cocaine and I turned it into 2 kilos of hard. How did I learn that? How did I become a millionaire? How did I acquire real estate? How did I understand marketing, branding, the importance of building powerful relationships? I didn't know those words until I learned those words in prison. So I was always a genius, like so many young people who make poor choices. But it took me years to realize that. The transformation, going from criminal to respected chef, it was a process. It was a journey. And I knew in order to be the best chef in America, I had to go amongst the best chefs to learn, to study. And when I came to Las Vegas in the year 2000, it was a challenge for me. I wanted to work at the world famous Bellagio Hotel. And the Bellagio, I call it the Big B, the Bentley of them all. It took me 3.5 years to get a job at the Bellagio. I changed my walk 3.5 times. And I finally got the job. The transformation. We talk about leadership. We talk about diversity. We talk about the sleeper cells in the hood, the sleeper cells in urban communities, the trailer parks, at the border camps, in New York City projects, geniuses just like us, but they've been untapped. No one looks at them. No one takes the time to develop them, develop that intellect. We talk about the immigration issues that we're facing in this country today. Who's the untapped workforce? It's the homies. It's the Jose's, the Shaniqua, the Malcolms, the Sams, the Mikes, the Jessicas. That's the workforce of the future. And I'm going to close out, talk about the faces of poverty in the American dream. The American dream. Why not? Why shouldn't we live the American dream? Why shouldn't the young people like at KEP High School that I went to speak at yesterday, they look like these young people, Latino, poor whites. Doesn't matter where you come from, what religion you are, what your story is. Everybody has the power of potential. everybody can change. To me, it was the house, a refrigerator with choices for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, a fruit bowl in the middle of the table, a family. So many of these young people have been impacted and influenced by negativity. Many of these children, some of them are crack babies, hustler babies, sugar daddy babies. Most of them never was wanted. And they're here, but what do? I believe that each and every one of them should have that opportunity to live the dream. I've been extremely blessed. I wrote my life story 4 years ago, and I went on the Oprah Winfrey Show. And she gave me a platform to reach out to young people across this country. And after I was on Oprah, I got a call from Will Smith and Sony. They purchased the right to my life story. And I really wasn't interested in selling it right at that moment because I want to understand how the story was going to prevail. What's very important to me is that I use my story to change lives. We have to talk about the social issues of crack and drugs, teenage pregnancy, and the influence of gangs in this country. And I thank all the people who have given me an opportunity, but not just me, but all people. Doesn't matter if you're a convicted felon, doesn't matter if you don't have teeth in your mouth. Every one of us are successful. Every one of us are living the American dream because somebody reached back and gave us access, gave us the private lessons, and gave us the opportunity. I want to thank you guys very much for having me. Thank you. Thank you.
Jeff, when you were 7 or 8, you said your mother made the loving misstep of calling you a man. At what point in your life did you become a man?
In prison. It was in prison where I had the time to reflect and look in the mirror and ask myself, who am I? I didn't know who I was. My brain didn't work. I didn't know how to use it. I fell victim of what people said would happen to me. I would wind up in prison. So I heard that in my life, and I wound up in prison. So we take a young person and you put that negativity around them, they sometimes become that. Prison worked for me. It doesn't work for everyone. That was my journey in life. And in there I found my purpose in the kitchen and amongst great minds, even though they use them for the wrong things. And the only difference between them and us was the product, and I understood that. And I came home and able to be successful.
Jeff, thank you so much.